Man here is an animal. Man here was an animal. He had no civilization. He wore no clothes. He thought no thoughts. He spoke no language.
Just a few feet from this tent, you found a cemetery. Built and filled by a civilized race. A race which, according to you, never got beyond a crawl and a couple of grunts.
The makeup for the test was the work of Ben Nye, the head of Fox's makeup department. Although primitive, it did the trick.
It proved that the idea could work. It wasn't laughable.
After screening the test, Richard Zanner gave Arthur Jacobs the green light he had long been waiting for. Planet of the Apes would, at last, become a reality. Planet of the Apes was scheduled to begin filming in the spring of 1967, leaving the filmmakers with only 7 months to prepare, an uncomfortably short time for such an ambitious production. Although there was still some dissatisfaction with the script, everyone agreed that the biggest challenge was the ape makeup. Ben Nye's test had been a good start, but a makeup artist was needed with experience in prosthetics, lightweight latex appliances that could be molded and used for long periods of time. A call went out, and the man who answered it was John Chambers. Chambers was a former World War II medical technician who had begun his career working in a veterans hospital, designing prosthetic limbs and facial restorations for injured soldiers. In the early 1950s, he moved to California, believing his unique skills would prove a valuable asset to the newly emerging television industry. His skill with prosthetics soon put him at the top of his profession. Within a decade, he was developing creature makeups for shows like The Munsters, The Outer Limits, and Lost in Space. He even designed Mr. Spock's famous ears for the Star Trek television series. Chambers was innovative, clever, and quick, skills that would be put to the test when he began working on Planet of the Apes in January 1967. The task was formidable. Chambers and his team had to design appliances that could turn over 200 human beings into walking, talking apes. Do it for under $1 million and make it happen in less than 4 months.
When I saw the test film, I thought it was very good for what they had just tried offhand without any experimenting. When you do people like that, you have to be very careful that you don't make the audience laugh at you, but laugh along with you.
With Fox's makeup laboratory at his disposal, Chambers got down to work. The first order of business was to solve the technical challenges. The makeup needed to suggest realistic mouth movements.
The appliances worked more with the facial muscles, showing the animation through the actor, creating the overextensive smile or talk.
Surrounding himself with talented artists and promising newcomers, Chambers worked around the clock, and extras were hired just to sit in for numerous makeup tests.
Arthur Jacobs called me one day and he said, "We're not getting anywhere, you know, we got to get going." He said, "See if you can help those guys." I said, "Anybody ever thought of actually looking at an ape?" He said, "Yeah, if you think you can get us an ape, we'd love to see it." So I went back to Arthur and I said, "They need an ape." He said, "Get him one." The next day I walk into makeup with a chimpanzee. You know, and these guys went crazy.
Next, design choices were made to differentiate various types of apes. Chimps, who were sympathetic to man in the story, were made to look a little more human in appearance. The gorillas represented the ape military and were given faces much fiercer than their real-life counterparts. And the aristocratic orangutans were given a more noble visage. What Chambers was creating for Planet of the Apes was not only ingenious, it was breaking new ground.
The actors actually were able to express emotion through those makeups. It's kind of tough, and John Chambers made it work.
While John Chambers labored on the makeup design, Arthur Jacobs turned his attention to the script. Rod Serling's screenplay had remained faithful to the original novel and depicted a technologically advanced society. But the production team began to fear that the apes were too evolved. Futuristic helicopters and cars would be too expensive to film.
The early designs were very high-tech civilization, which meant you had to design all kinds of special vehicles and so on, and buildings. And Frank said, I don't have enough budget as it is. He said, why don't we say it's a very primitive society? And they use horse and wagons and very primitive buildings, and that's what we did.
After deciding on a more rustic and cost-efficient ape society, Jacobs contacted screenwriter Michael Wilson. Wilson was an Academy Award winner who had earlier collaborated on the screen adaptation of Pierre Boulle's The Bridge on the River Kwai.
Mike Wilson did a rewrite which was very close to being right. We were already dealing with a science fiction central idea. And I had learned, because I'd done a lot of science fiction things on television, that you cannot present too many science fiction ideas and have them work unless you had characters, believable human, or characters with human responses. And we couldn't contain all of the science fiction that Pierre had envisioned, and we had to simplify it.
As the script began taking shape, production designer William Kreber began designing the more primitive ape society.
I need to come up with some ape unearthly architecture, and so I looked at all the books I could find to, be inspired. And I found in Turkey there's a troglodyte city carved into a mountain. And I liked the shapes, and it was a very strange place. And that was it. It was like, that's what we're going to do. And I don't know how we're going to do it, but we had our meeting with the director and Arthur, and they said, yeah.
With the start of actual filming drawing near, the production was hit by the unexpected loss of actor Edward G. Robinson. Voicing concerns over the lengthy makeup process, he decided to withdraw from the role of Dr. Zaius.
When we got to make the picture, and we said, Eddie, we got to have a go in the picture, he said, guys, I can't do it. He said, my heart's shot. He said, I'm too old. And he said, that makeup just drove me crazy. He said, I couldn't possibly do that, day after day. He said, I got to pass.
Studio executives were also expressing concern, this time over the film's escalating budget. On April the 28th, only 3 weeks before filming was set to begin, the studio cut the production's 55-day shooting schedule by 10 days. All aspects of the production were affected, with the exception of the makeup and wardrobe budget, which remained at almost $1 million. Jacobs and the studio finally settled on a budget of $5.8 million. And on May the 21st, 1967, Planet of the Apes went before the cameras, and Hollywood history was about to be made.